What's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel. I am so excited because there are a lot of new faces here. So if you are new to my videos, I am so happy you're here. Thank you so much for joining me on my adventure reviewing all things running shoes. It all started with a passion for running and a lack of finding shoes that worked for me. So I decided that I would take it upon myself to try all of the fun shoes that are being released in the market or just that have been recommended to me and speak to them and let you know if they are a Thunderstruck shoe. What's a Thunderstruck shoe, might you ask? Because everyone seems to be a little confused if you haven't been following me for very long. But no problem, I'm here to explain it to you. So Thunderstruck just is my song of choice. That's the song that gets me through the toughest of runs. And I decided to use that as my little catchphrase, if you will, for if a shoe is a good fit for me and if I would recommend it for you. We are talking today about the Nike Vomero Premium. Now this is a shoe that a few people recommended to try. They wanted to see what it was like, and it is a beast of a shoe, I will say. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it, but I want to tell you all the things and talk about what the shoe's specs are, the different technologies used, and all that fun stuff. And then I will report back if I enjoyed it for a run. Oh my God. Guys, what is this? This is insane. Look at that stack height on the shoe. This is a really tall shoe. I don't know about this, but I had to have it match my outfit, as you can see. I will say, now, the men's shoes in general, I feel like I prefer the colorways that come out with the men's variations. I'm pretty indifferent on this colorway. I think it's sold out now. This flew. Like, this shoe released, I believe, just a few weeks ago. So it's a really, really new shoe. They are releasing a new colorway in both men's and women's November 13th. So if you didn't get your hands on this and you're still interested in trying it, take a look and see on November 13th if you can get your size. They sell out so quick. I didn't get this from Nike's website just because it was sold out. And I only waited 24 hours after this release, just to give you that heads up. If you're dying to try it, get on it right away. This is the newest shoe in the Vomero lineup. We have the Vomero Premium, which is this shoe here. There's the Vomero Plus, and there's the Vomero 18. I believe there's another shoe too, but I don't feel that really kind of fits in with this family. This is a maximum cushion shoe, if you can't tell. But there's a lot of cushioning going on here. This is meant for everyday long mile training. So the goal here is to take a lot of the stress off of your joints, off of your muscles, to be able to carry you a long way. So think of this as like kind of a recovery shoe in your lineup or your rotation, and something that you can go ahead and take out and sustain for a long time. Also really supposed to be a solid shoe if you are recovering from an injury, but you still want to go ahead and rack up those miles. This could be a good option for you. This is being dubbed as having anti-gravity-like sensations. It is combining the plush ZoomX foam in the midsole and forefoot. This is supposed to help with a little bit of that responsiveness. And then in the heel, as you can see, there are air zoom units. So those are the same ones that are used in a couple other of Nike's shoes, the Nike Max Fly 2 and the Victory 2 track spikes. I'm actually very new to Nike. This will be my second Nike shoe I have ever run in, and it's a beast of one to try for being very new to Nike. So we'll see how it goes. A couple things that I'm a little concerned about off the bat. Now, this is a very tall stack height, as I said at the very beginning. This is 55 millimeter stack height. So it is not a shoe you can competitively race in. You can race in it if you are not carrying to qualify for any type of Olympic trials, or I guess if you want your marathon time to be considered for other marathons. So it's too high. I think 40 is the cutoff for that. 55, quite a bit taller. But again, it's because it's stacking in a lot of foam so that you can go ahead and run for a long time comfortably. But I've never run in anything much higher. I think 40, low 40s was probably the highest I've ever run in. So this is pretty aggressive from my perspective. They do have a bit of a wider sole, as you can see here. So the wider sole is going to be helping a little bit to increase some stability, because obviously with that tall stack height, you're going to have some stability concerns, but that's why they made that wider sole here. So it's just a lot more shoe overall, which is also why it is on the heavier side, but we'll get into that in just a moment. The heel to toe drop here is 10 millimeters. So that is what I am a little bit concerned about personally. I really enjoy shoes between 6 and 8 millimeters for my heel to toe drop, primarily because I'm a midfoot striker. Typically with a higher drop, you end up having a little bit more heel striking action going on. Now, if you've seen some of my other videos, I've talked about that and pros and cons of that, and it's super, super dependent on the person and your overall striking pattern in accordance to your body. I think I may be more inclined to heel striking in this shoe, especially since it is more of that recovery shoe with easier miles. I am going to be taking it a little bit slower, which naturally does sort of mess up my form just a tiny bit. I have to be a little bit more cognizant of keeping my same striking pattern as I go with those slower paces. So I am concerned that we'll have some heel striking, but I'll keep you posted on how it goes. If you saw my recent Saucony review, you'll know that the biggest concern I had with that was the heel to toe drop. Overall, it was a very, very comfortable shoe. Just had an issue with my form and it started to create other ailments that I didn't want to have to deal with long term. Weight of this shoe, a women's US size 8 comes in at 9.8 ounces. Now, this is the heaviest shoe I've ever run in. I don't know how I feel about it. I understand recovery shoes that you're going to be running in for longer periods of time are naturally going to be a little bit heavier because it's just more shoe to it. You have a lot more cushion, you have a lot more support built in to be able to sustain. It's not about pace. So I have to keep that in mind when I'm running in this. It's not going to be something I'm going to take off in. I need this to be something that I can run comfortably in for a long period of time. I also very reluctantly, and I'm announcing it here because I have spoken of my love for half marathons and how I've run a lot of half marathons, enjoy them, never run a full, but I have signed up for the Chicago Marathon Lottery. Am I crazy? Am I hitting this quarter life crisis thing going on? I don't know, maybe, because I have specifically said so many times that I will never run a full marathon. Never really considered it, just didn't have the appeal to me. My body hurts after 13.1. Why would I want to put myself through 2 of those? But alas, here we are. This is a shoe that I'm hopeful would be really good if I get into that Chicago Marathon to be able to have some longer recovery runs comfortably, because I'm going to need it, okay? Wish me luck. The men's US size 10 comes in at 12.4 ounces. So it's a heavier shoe. Let you guys be the judge of if that works for you. The rhyming is just next level for me sometimes. It just comes out of my mouth so seamlessly. Price point for this shoe is $230 US. We'll talk more about that later and how I feel. There is a waffle outsole with high abrasion rubber. So this is supposed to be a very, very solid shoe for traction control. I don't perceive there are going to be any issues with this. I feel like this is a solid overall outsole design. Another concern I have looking at this shoe is temperature control. So I've spoken a lot about how I feel that I need a thinner shoe that has enough structure to kind of support my foot, but I really want to make sure it's breathable. Now it is an engineered mesh upper, so the upper component here is relatively thin looking and what I would perceive would be breathable, but when we get down into the heel collar and tongue of the shoe is where I'm having some concerns. The heel collar is very, very thick. Again, this is a max cushion shoe. There's going to be all of the elements to help you be able to run a lot of miles, but that's pretty thick. So we'll see how that feels for me. I don't think I'm going to have any issues with blistering, which is a bonus, but the tongue as well has a lot of foam here. Now's the time to take these out for my test run. We're looking at maybe 5 miles. Again, easy recovery pace. So I'm looking at probably doing 8 minutes per mile and slower. And I want to, have a little bit of variety in there. And we'll see if this really does have that anti-gravity sensation that it claims to have. I'll report back soon. Stay tuned. My stilts and I are back from our run. When I say stilts, I mean come on, guys. It felt like I was running on stilts, but I have a lot to say about this shoe. I mean, again, remember, this is all my opinion. I'm just going to give you my initial thoughts, my perspective, how it felt during the run, things I liked, things I didn't like, and then, of course, answer the question if it is a Thunderstruck shoe. Overall, stepping into the shoe, I did feel it fit pretty true to size in terms of the length of the shoe. I will say, and I think this is pretty standard for Nike, someone else who is well versed in Nike may be able to speak to this more. Of course, like I said, I've only tried a couple pairs of Nike running shoes, but it did feel a tad narrow in the toe box here. I do typically have narrow feet, so for me, it was not a huge issue. However, could see someone who does have a wider foot that this would be a little too snug for them and maybe not the most comfortable. I did feel a tiny bit of rubbing, and it does make me concerned that if I had run more than 5 miles, that maybe it would be more of an issue. Again, since I only ran 5 miles, it wasn't a big deal breaker for me, but something I did want to call out. It did feel very plush stepping into it. I was a little concerned that I was going to have that sinking in feeling that I'm not a fan of. Knowing that this shoe was going to have some propulsion elements baked in with the foam composition, I was not that concerned. Once I got going, it definitely did not have that sinking in feeling. I was pleasantly surprised with that, again, because it was a little misleading stepping in. Very comfortable, I will say. I mean, that sinking in feeling is not an uncomfortable feeling, but it's not necessarily the most conducive for long runs or even short runs, really. I mean, unless that's what you like. It's preferential at the end of the day with certain little minor components. This had a very, very good, comfortable base to it and had the propulsion that I was sort of looking for, but not too much. It didn't feel, again, it's a recovery shoe. It's an everyday shoe, long runs. So it definitely didn't feel like I was springing forward. Now, some other things I did notice within that kind of performance part of the run was that I did find that I was having some, I guess, kind of dragging with my feet. I felt that it was pretty hard to get that turnover that I'm used to having. And I did notice my feet were sort of like every once in a while, not constantly, but would drag. Or I wouldn't be able to lift up my foot fully. And some of that could be due to the weight of the shoe too. As I'm not used to a heavier shoe, it could have been a bit of a learning curve for me. Just something to note there. I'm really cognizant of my form. I've been trying to make sure that is at the forefront of my mind when I'm running, because that is like the foundation for everything, right? I mean, that can impact your breathing. It can impact different ailments that you may have, and again, leading to injuries, and we don't want that, especially in training season. I did notice my form was maybe a little off, but it didn't bother me. I had tried that Saucony shoe previously. Something that I didn't love with primarily what I was believing to be that higher heel drop was I was heel striking a little bit more. And sure, it took some of the pain and discomfort out of my calves that I had been experiencing. And that was kind of what led me to try those shoes, just because I was having some calf issues. That was a bonus, but then it was bothering my shins because I think some of that heel striking was just changing my running form. Now with these, I had a hard time determining if my running form was really changing. I felt like it almost did a really good job at masking anything that maybe wasn't my true form. So what I mean by that is I'm usually a midfoot striker. I didn't have any issues in my shins and my calves. I felt very, very refreshed after the run, and that is huge for a shoe such as this, for those recovery runs, to feel refreshed and not held back or not sore and tired, because the point is to get some of those miles in, but not have it, cause issues, I guess. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I mean, that the lack of pain, good, obviously, but I don't know if it's a good or bad thing that I had a hard time telling when and if my form was changing. That concerns me a tiny bit, only because if I don't have a really good obvious indicator that's triggering me and prompting me to remember, we're getting a little lazy here. We're starting to heel strike when we normally would be doing our midfoot striking, or we're not lifting our feet up fully, whatever it may be. I didn't really have a lot of cues that were helping me with that. I don't know. I would need to get a few more runs in to really tell you how that really impacts long term, but I think that would be a concern for me. I did find that this shoe did run a little hot. As I said before the run, it was something I was sort of anticipating. I just don't love hot shoes personally. I don't know if anyone loves a hot shoe, I should say, but more or less that I do really go for very minimalist shoes that still have a minor stability element. I mean, this is a very solid heel collar here, and I had no blistering issues, which is a win. We love that, but just if you tend to run a little hot, you'll probably notice that this is going to be a tad on the warmer side. I think it makes up for it a tiny bit in that toe box because it is very thin and breathable up front. It just thickens a lot in the back, and then obviously the tongue as well. I think that this shoe could cut back a tiny bit there and still not really have a big difference in terms of the overall performance. But of course, I'm not in the shoe engineering, creation, design team wheelhouse, so it's not really my forte, just my opinion. My speed range for this, I did stay between that 8 minutes and 8 minute and 45 seconds-ish. I felt that range would be very conducive for a recovery shoe for myself. I did find it harder to pick up the pace because it is heavier. Now, again, it's so minimal when you think in the big scheme of things. When I typically run in like 6.5 ounce shoes that I really enjoy, and then you compare it to a 9.8 ounce shoe, now it's, it's only 3 ounces heavier, but it does make a difference, especially the more you're running. I didn't love the weight of it. I will say, I do think that was contributing to a little bit of that lack of getting that full rotation down with my feet coming up and really getting into that good, well-rounded stride. I don't know that everyone would have an issue for it. If you're not typically used to lighter weight shoes necessarily, it may not bother you. It wasn't uncomfortable, but I mean, it did impact me. It's not meant to go fast anyway, so it's really not a huge deal that it thrived more at slower paces. As we said, this is not approved by the World Athletics, and I'm looking at the shoe because I noticed this right before I took them out for a run. It literally says that on the shoe, which is so funny because, again, the stack height is so high. If you're not trying to have a race that's qualifying for anything, you can still run a marathon in these, but I would personally have a hard time running 26 miles. I would have a hard time running 26 miles anyways, but with a shoe that was this heavy. This may be controversial, but I kind of found some similarities in how this felt to the Superblast by Asics. Now, again, I know there's a lot of people who love the Superblast by Asics. I did really like those. I strayed away a little bit due to the weight, but those are like a full ounce lighter than these, and for that, I sort of prefer it. But I mean, that's definitely a shoe that you can pick up the pace in, and that would be one that I would say you can do a competition in and be able to perform a little bit faster because it's a lighter weight, a little bit more responsive. But this is just meant for those recovery miles. So that's the biggest difference here. Let's get into the different ratings that I have across the board for this shoe, and then we can talk a tad bit more and determine if it is a Thunderstruck shoe. Quality. I'm going to go ahead and give this a 9.3. This shoe is a very high quality shoe across the board. I really don't have many complaints in terms of the structure of the shoe. The foam composition is great. Those air zoom units were really cool. It definitely did have a lot more fun responsiveness that I didn't expect, and I think that this is going to hold up for a long time. It is a very sturdy, durable shoe. The heel collar, as I said, very, very solid. I don't have any really complaints here. Performance, I would say this is a 9.4. This did exactly what it said it would do. I felt that I could run in the shoe a long distance and be very comfortable. The fact that my legs felt so good after, and that's very uncommon for me, especially getting into 5 miles and longer for runs. Usually there's gonna be something that's starting to get a little bit physically off. Depends on what's going on that day, but I felt refreshed. I felt like I could continue to go, aside from the weight component, but that's a personal preference at the end of the day. That doesn't really impact the performance of what this shoe says it can do. Since it is meant for those everyday recovery runs, it's not meant to go fast. We don't need to have that light weight to go and just take off for a half marathon or any kind of race. I did really think that was solid in terms of what you can use this shoe for. Now, I will say though, personally, due to the weight, I don't know that I could run that long without being a little bit bothered by the weight and the heat. Doesn't really, again, overall, I think impact the performance for the average person. So I'm just speaking to my preference here. Price point. I'm going to go ahead and give this a 7.9. I think this is overpriced. Personally, I think of other max training shoes in the market right now. And again, I haven't run in a ton. It's kind of a newer lane for me since I'm trying to be more cognizant and diligent about those recovery runs. I'm still familiarizing myself with a lot of those different shoes, but if you think of some other competitors in this kind of category, like your Brooks Glycerin Max, that's coming in at 200. The Brooks Ghost Max, those are coming in at 160. Like I said, I found these to be sort of similar to the Asics Superblast. That's a $200 shoe, which again, in that category, that price point even seems a tad high. But from what I'm seeing, a lot of those more max cushioned recovery everyday type training shoes, it's 200 and under typically. I'm sure there's some out there that do go above, but for $230, I think it's overpriced. I think it's a cool shoe. I definitely feel that it is worth trying, especially if you really love a solid recovery shoe. Comfort, I'm gonna go ahead and give this a 9.6. That may be my highest comfort rating yet, which is pretty impressive. Now, the reason for this, again, it's from stepping into actually running and how I felt after the run that really sold it for me. I was very impressed with the overall comfort of this shoe. It fit like a glove for myself and my more narrow feet. It didn't have too much snugness here, a tiny bit in the beginning, but the cushioning, the foam, everything just really came together very, very seamlessly. I was very impressed with how this felt. And just to end my run with no discomfort, I was so happy. That's such a win. And I would be so curious to see how someone would enjoy this for like a beyond a 13.1 half marathon distance, because I do think it can hang. Again, weight-wise, I don't know that I would love that. That would maybe be a tad uncomfortable for me personally, but I'm just really trying to keep it like at its core, my initial thoughts and feelings, and just basing it off of this one run. Now, is this a Thunderstruck shoe? I'm going to go ahead and say yes, it is a Thunderstruck shoe. I don't know that it is the best shoe for me due to the weight primarily. That's really my only reason, but I'm not having that take away from the fact that I would recommend this shoe for everything else that I had out of this experience. The fact that the heel drop didn't really impact me and cause any issues with slight maybe variances in my form, that was a win. If you are a midfoot striker, I would still be a little cautious of your form and really trying to be diligent and staying on top of where your form is at while using this shoe, because it is kind of hard to tell if your form is slipping. And I think that that could create potentially bad habits in the long run if you use this a lot and you have a totally different striking pattern in a different shoe. So just something to be aware of. It's something that I was a little concerned about, but it didn't impact me negatively, at least in these 5 miles. You're going to really enjoy this shoe for recovery runs. Do not try and take this out fast. It's not meant to go fast. It is actually a surprisingly fun shoe for those slower paces, which you don't find very often. It felt lively, and for that, I enjoyed it. A few things that would make this shoe even better would be if this thing lit up. Like, come on, look at that. This looks like this should be a shoe that lights up. And the green version for men that I really wanted would have been even sweeter if that lit up. Another thing that would make this shoe better is if that drop was 8 millimeters. That would be so much more enjoyable for me. With that all being said, if anybody else has a recommendation for another recovery shoe that maybe fits some of those little things I pointed out at the end, dropping that heel drop a little bit and a little bit of the weight, let me know. Would love to try them out and do a little bit of a comparison. Let me know if you tried this shoe and what your thoughts are. Until next time, thank you for tuning in. Can't wait to talk to you guys soon with the next pair of shoes.